C.
Camera speed. Vernon Reid, Finding the Funk, take 3.
So I mean, a lot of the developments with funk are tied to technology.
Absolutely.
I want you to talk a little bit about Prince and
Oh, sure.
and what he did to funk. What was his biggest contribution in terms of the sound of funk?
Well, I think one of the things about the way Prince recorded is that he had a unique sound to his drums. He used the drum machine, but he also used live drums. And he also used keyboards in a very kind of a way that hadn't been used before. The way he used, say, I Want to Be Your Lover. On that song, the way he used lead synthesizers for accents and things. The way he played rhythm guitar. The way he used like really kind of cool kind of chords like minor 6 chords and things like that. They're instantly recognizable.
So Prince was really
He was a real arranger, though. He's a real, not just as a composer, but the way he arranged his music was very unique. You know, he had a unique signature. I mean, the thing about all of the music is that this all came out of bands, and all of the bands had unique signatures, like the Isley Brothers. I mean, really, Ernie Isley really produced like those records, because like Who's That Lady is like their best known song from the 70s. It was a big hit for them because they were a group that had hits in the 50s, and so they were actually considered in the 70s to kind of be too old to have hits, but they had the youngest brother, Ernie, you know, was also a drummer. He played drums on their records as well. Now, Who's That Lady originally was like a bossa nova. Like, he had recorded it earlier, and he rearranged it as this. I mean, it became just this funk opus.
It's interesting because so let's talk about Hendrix and funk.
Oh, sure.
Because the Band of Gypsies album in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Had a profound impact, I thought.
Yeah.
Or was it Hendrix being affected by funk? How did Mr. Don?
Well, Hendrix, the thing that you have to remember about Hendrix is that Hendrix is an R&B guitar player. So Hendrix really was steeped in rhythm and blues. He didn't appear out of nowhere. And then people focus on him being psychedelic and taking LSD, and they even focus on him being a blues musician. But he was actually a rhythm and blues musician, and he also played in rock and roll bands. Like played with Little Richard, he played with the Isley Brothers. So playing with the Isley Brothers, I mean, that whole thing, R&B was very hierarchical. Like, the singer is in charge. The singer is the leader of the band, and everyone else backs up the singer. And if anyone is featured, they're featured at the largesse of the singer, right? And so that's why Jimi Hendrix got into a lot of trouble all the time. He got into trouble all the time because he would do all of his kind of showmanship stuff, play with his teeth, play behind his head, play between his legs, and it would turn into, I'm the star, right? So that's what Little Richard, it went down like that, and that went down with a lot of different groups that he was part of. So he eventually went to London and hooked up the Band of Gypsies, and there was a certain thing that they did. When he did Hendrix Experience, and there was a certain thing that Mitch Mitchell, the drummer, and Noel Redding, the bass player, did. When he started this other band with Billy Cox, he started the band with his buddy from the war, not the war, his army buddy. He was never in the war. Back that up. Buddy Miles, he started the Band of Gypsies with the drummer Buddy Miles, who's already a star with the Electric Flag, and his army buddy Billy Cox. And Buddy Miles is just, in terms of his rhythm, he's an incredibly funky drummer, and that changed the feel of his music. So he was doing something that was very, very, very different than what he'd done previously, and it had a huge impact on, Hendrix had a huge impact, because if you think about Funkadelic, if you think about Bootsy Collins, if you think about the Ohio Players, when they dipped into rock, Hendrix was at that sound of Hendrix. Like, in fact, if you think about Bootsy Collins' singing voice is almost like an imitation of Hendrix's speaking voice. It's almost a kind of drawn out, exaggerated version of Hendrix's voice. So Jimi Hendrix as a figure had a massive impact, had a huge impact.
Now, I know you're a big sci.
Turn on the image stabilization. I think I turned it off when I was
I know you're a big sci-fi fan.
Sure.
So one of the things that's really striking about the difference between soul into what funk became,
Right.
the slide all the way really even into the cameo 80s, was the fact that it was very futuristic compared to soul had been very, I wear a suit, I'm very in now.
Right.
Funk seemed to be always pushing to the future.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna interview people for this, you have to find the clothing designers, because, like, if you think about bands from the New Birth through Atlantic Star, I mean, through Earth, Wind and Fire, like, there was a whole costuming thing. Certainly Parliament Funkadelic. There was a whole kind of, I mean, it was space, the final frontier. And it was a big part of the look. It was a theater. Like, a lot of what happened was a very kind of theatrical presentation of the music. And the look of these bands, I mean, they were outrageous. The way they dressed, the way they presented themselves was very, very hip. If you think about all of the Ohio Players covers, you know, Pleasure, Pain, Fire, you know.
Don't leave out Skin Tight.
Skin Tight, of course. Skin Tight, the ultimate, right? But there was this the expressiveness of the music. Like, I think about, like, a singer like Billy Paul, who was famous for Me and Mrs. Jones. You know, he did a record called The War of the Gods, and it was it was a double album. It was completely, it was high concept. A lot of what happened with funk was high concept. Certainly the ultimate was the Mothership Connection. You know, and, you know, there was a whole thing with Earth, Wind and Fire. They were focused on Egypt. There was a whole Egyptology and pyramid power, but the whole idea of the past and the future being collapsed. You know, that was a big part of it. The whole idea of a new consciousness that would be arrived at through music was a big kind of organizing principle that showed up again and again with these bands.
That particular thread, even though funk has changed, it seems like when I think of Outkast, Monet, that particular strain of space black people,
right,
seems to still have stayed.
Well, you have to think about the idea of utopia and dystopia. I mean, certainly Odd Future, and Tyler, the Creator, I mean, that's a very dystopic, dysfunctional, and it's kind of celebrating a kind of dysfunction. That's a certain strain. NWA, like the whole idea of the ghetto-centric is creating a world. It's a worldview that's in its own way, a very oppressive, and it's very much a hip hop noir worldview. And then on the other side, there's love, peace, and freedom. Hendrix represented this idea in a big way. His Star Spangled Banner, as jagged and as edgy as it was, he was talking about a different view of the nation. And that's, the idea of Chocolate City, the idea of cities that were either majority black or that whole idea of like naming those cities was a thing. The idea of there being a nation within a nation.
It seemed like that for whatever reason that was a very conceptual period of black music.
Sure.
Okay, Living Color.
Right.
How as you guys are developing your band, how much do these ideas affect how you guys conceive of the band?
Oh, it was a huge part of it. It was a huge part of it. I mean, all of that kind of, all those framing devices, that music itself could transform what reality is. I mean, which is kind of, that almost Aldous Huxley, the door of perception, right? That there's another reality. If we could just figure out the code or the thing that lifts the veil or opens the doorway. And Coltrane, what Coltrane did, what Ornette Coleman did, was the idea of transformative art, that you're going to be different through the experience. That's what the Hendrix experience was about. There's a unity between those musics, even though they're very different. What Miles Davis was doing, this whole idea of transformation was a big part of certainly the 60s, and that changed a bit in the 70s. But the roots of that, some of that was, on the one hand, you have transcendental meditation, on the other hand, you have pot and LSD, or whatever, to just get paid, or music itself as a kind of drug thing. So that culture, that music could change your night, was very much a part of what went into what Living Color is. Now, there are very different views of this. There's also, take me where I want to go, right? So you already know the place you want to arrive, and the musician, entertainer, DJ, whoever it is, takes you to the place you already want to be, right? So a lot of this idea is also from the church and from religion. There's a whole idea about what church is, and the idea of salvation, and that doing something in the name of a particular set of ideas anoints it, sanctifies it, makes it holy, this, that, and the other thing. And this is very much amongst African American performers is a very big thing. There are very few out of the closet atheists in funk and R&B. It's a dangerous place for anybody to be. No one would come out like that because very much the black church dominates. It's one of the institutions that was central in being the grounding for the vocalists, for the instrumentalists.
No matter how freaky they went there, even as freaky as Parliament Funkadelic is, you hear the gospel all in their music.
Well, yeah, that's the part of the conflict. That's essentially, it's about fallen people, right? It's the idea that that's Cosmic Slop. The song Cosmic Slop is all about a woman, who's got to do dirty things to feed her family, and she prays every night. She says, don't judge me don't judge me too strong, right? But the thing about the chorus is the devil saying, "Would you like to dance with me? We're doing the Cosmic Slop." And that whole idea of redemption that's just out of reach, and is a very powerful, the very powerful idea. Like King Heroin. The idea of literally it's one of James Brown's most brilliant pieces of music. He literally embodies what heroin is. But if you think about Freddie's Dead, it was a chronicle of a person who fell off in a big way. There was love in this man. He was talented. He was cool. And Freddie's on the corner now. If you want to be a junkie, wow. The whole idea of cautionary tales. But the cautionary tales, that's an old device. That's an old griotic storytelling device. Like all the Players rhymes. You're talking about how pimps fell off. The cardinal rule: don't get high off your own supply.
Talk to me a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit about now. Funk is this music that came out of this rich tradition of black visionaries, of black musical craftsmanship, and when I go see a lot of bands I see now that play in the traditional style of funk are white bands from New Orleans or other places.
Absolutely.
How has that happened? And is the black community, is funk becoming like jazz and blues?
Well, I wonder where the center is. Where what it's changed a lot. But there's still excellent work being done. The institutions, the community institutions have been under threat since the cutbacks and all like that. after school programs, music programs, I mean, but they're still, the mega churches are turning out incredible players, I mean, the community centers things and the after school programs, where that happens, it has an impact. I mean, like a single music teacher can have a huge impact on a whole community, and that still does happen. So I don't want to say it's all gloom and doom. And also, different things are happening now. Like people are picking up the iPad. People have been into the computer thing for a while, and you're hearing the beginnings of very like an artist like Flying Lotus, who's doing, who's doing like a post Jay Dilla, what Jay Dilla did, as a producer and as a composer. That's it's being updated. But live music and live community. I recently spoke to an original member of Little Anthony and the Imperials, and he has a grandchild that goes to the same school that my daughter goes to, and we started talking about what happened. There was a whole ecology of singing groups, and that has completely vanished. It's remarkable. Like you could think of in the history of funk and R&B. I mean, the Delphonics, the Stylistics, the Shy Lights, the Temptations, Blue Magic. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on.
Let me ask you this. I mean, that's
I've changed everything.